Hey guys, this is the lesson for Thursday, April 9th. We're going to be talking today about Hamlet's Soliloquy, Act 1, Scene 2, where he's talking about the remarriage of his mother following his father's death. And just to give you a preview here, this is what you'll be expected to do at the end of your analysis, is to provide basically a quick outline. Give a thesis in 3 topic sentences to this prompt, right? What is his complex attitude towards his father's death and mother's remarriage? And I'm giving you some devices here to think about, right? Tone, diction, and allusion, okay? So that's ultimately what we're working towards. And to do that and to give you raw materials for that, essentially, you're going to be making some observations here. I'm asking you for 10. I'm going to walk through this and give you 5. And we're going through this much as we did the King Richard passage. However, I'm not giving you the paraphrase on the right. We spent a lot of time with that. You can find paraphrases for this passage online, so we won't spend time with that. We're going to be focusing on observations, although I will touch on the literal meaning as we go here. So I'm just going to get started. We're going to give you some observations that will help you with that prompt. So let's get started. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. All right. And so just so you know, this is the scene. You have Hamlet alone in this audience hall, basically, of the palace in Denmark. Claudius and Gertrude and all the courtiers have sort of had their audience and spoken with Hamlet about not grieving too much. And they've all left. So now it's just Hamlet. And he's just sort of giving us his raw thoughts on what the situation is. And we see right away that he's feeling very strongly about this. I'm seeing, okay, that this too solid flesh would melt. All right. So he's thinking, well, he wants to die, basically, right? When your flesh melts, you are not living anymore and resolve itself into a dew. So he wants to not exist anymore. Continuing on, or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Canon, referring to the words of God, biblical text and such. Oh God, oh God. All right. So let's just start with those 4 lines, some observations we can make. So oh is repeated in lines 1 and 4. I'm noticing that right away. So lots of O's happening. And this, when somebody's crying out like that, right, it emphasizes the emotional, right, the emotional plea, and there's a desperation in this word and its repetition. All right. So I'm starting to get a sense of the tone here, right, which is desperation and pleading. I also notice in terms of diction, he is mentioning everlasting and also God. So we talked about that a little bit before, right? And this emphasizes his prayerful, it should be pleading, not pleasing. And so this is sort of when you plead to God, it's like, this is a cry for help from, God. And he might actually be pleading. He might actually be asking for help here, but he might also be saying it ironically, right? To add to the despair. Spelling is an issue. Okay. So, this might be totally in vain, and he knows it's in vain. That's totally a possibility. We're going to read on and see what the further reading can help us out with that. How weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of the world. All right. And pausing here, I'm just going to underline these things so that I know the devices that I'm focusing on here. What I notice here with these next few lines, and even starting in line 4 too, is the punctuation, right? many exclamation marks. So particular lines 4 and 7 clues me to strong emotion and perhaps a lack of control. Right? When somebody's, you can almost hear that they're yelling, right? It intensifies the tone. And so we know that he feels very strongly in that, and that he's not really in control of this. So that's something I want to keep an eye on as well. And, he's talking about the uses of the world. So he's like, all these things that we can do in the world that we can put ourselves to work at basically seem just really kind of useless and without a point. Fie on it, oh fie, 'tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. All right. So fie is kind of like an Elizabethan, so if you want to call it an expletive, if you will. He's, curse it, if you want to think of that as a ready synonym, curse it. It's an unweeded garden that grows to seed. So here he's using this this comparison, between life and an unweeded garden. Yes, it's people tend to think of the process of growing and bringing about new life as a positive thing, but he's, we notice in his diction, or I'm noticing in his diction, that he's using these words, rank, gross, these are in line 8, dead. And those words, and as all word choices tend to do, these contribute to the pessimistic tone. So he definitely doesn't think things are bright right now. They may never be bright for him, because he just sees that this whole process of living and growing is, it's like an unweeded garden, right? Things are out of control and they're ugly, right? Life is an ugly thing, as is indicated by this word choice. So reading on here, that it should come to this, but 2 months dead. He's referring to his father there. Nay, not so much, not 2. Okay. And here, another sense of another observation I'm making, punctuation. I'm noticing this dash, right? This big dash that's thrown in here. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, why that? And then immediately after, he seems to be correcting himself. I'm noticing that he says 2 months initially, but then I'm seeing that he says, no, not so much, not even 2. And this tends to point up the veracity of what he's talking about, right? When we talk to someone, and they're telling us something that happened, and they stop to correct themselves, it clues us in, okay, well, this person understands that they're not infallible, and they are trying to do their best to get it right. So when he's saying, it's like, no, not even 2, right? And it also sort of emphasizes, the sort of proximity of this remarriage, right? It's not even 2 months. So this is giving us a sort of a critical plot point as well of what's going on. So those are 5 observations that are giving you a big clues into his attitude, which is a complicated one, right? With respect to not just, yes, the situation between his mother and Claudius, but also how that expands out for him and deals to this more, and relates, it seems, to this more profound problem that's almost dealing with, life in general. Okay. Real quickly, I do want to talk about some of the allusions here. So Hyperion is a Greek allusion, right? Refers to one of the children of Gaia and Uranus, which are 2 of the sort of very first of the Greek gods. They're sort of gods. They're over everything, essentially. So very high in the pantheon. And that's compared to a satyr, right? Which is sort of a lowly woodland god, has these characteristics of being lustful and drunken, and often portrayed as half a beast, half a man. So in Greek mythology, that was half a horse. So lower body was a horse, upper body was a man. And with Roman mythology, that sort of changed to more of a goat, which is also a symbol of lustfulness, right? So just, low to high here, and you don't really need to dig too much deeper into these allusions to sort of understand where he's going with that comparison here. So that's the significance of that. Niobe down here. Niobe was also in Greek mythology. She boasted, she was a queen, right? Queen of Thebes, and she boasted that her children were more beautiful than Zeus's, and those children were ultimately killed for that, right? And she was actually turned to stone, after, but she continued to cry for her children even after that. So it's really symbolic of a mother's grief is what is important about this allusion right here. And again, it's kind of an ironic allusion, right? Because of what Gertrude has actually done in this story, the mother in this case. And I'll leave you to elaborate on that. And then Hercules, which is another Greek figure, right? He's the divine hero, a very well-known son of Zeus. And he's supposed to be, he's often seen as strong, incredibly physically strong, also beautiful, and supposed to be this, also morally, above compare, right? So he's the champion of the weak. And so this sort of serves to flesh out this comparison between his uncle and his dad, right? Sort of he's drawing that analogy, and that's like him to Hercules, right? They are so different that, we can use that comparison to help flesh that out. All right, so this should get you guys started. So again, thesis, 3 topic sentences. And yeah, please feel free to email me with any questions. I look forward to seeing what your responses are to this. Please refer to the lecture materials we've discussed in the past with regard to FRQ responses, because I will be looking for a thesis that definitely satisfies those. Thanks, and have a good